I have seen the torch of freedom pass from hand to yearning hand, and the vision of our fathers spread hope throughout this land, as the dreams some fought and died for in my heart becomes my own. I will strive to keep her promise, America, my home. America, America, may God bless America, and freedom reign across America, my home. From the shorelines to the prairies, to the cities great and small, we have reaped the fruits of justice and liberty for all.
So with deep appreciation for the blessings of freedom that we know in this wonderful country of ours, I'm Dr. George Simon, welcoming you to another edition of Character Matters. This is the program where we talk about what I consider to be the defining issue of our time, the character crisis that we face and that affects so many aspects of our lives and is responsible for so many of the difficulties that we have these days in so many areas of our lives. And if you want to join the conversation, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. I am hoping sincerely two things this evening. Number one, that all those brave souls who have tried to reach me at the program and tried to share their thoughts and ask their questions and have tried in vain the past few weeks to get through. I pray that they keep trying. And number two, my sincerest wish is that the fix that I hope we have made to the problem that we've been having patching callers in is solid and will work, and that we'll be able to take phone calls, which we have not been able to do for the last several weeks, and it's been very frustrating. I know it's been very frustrating for me as your host, and it's been very frustrating for those trying to call in and join the conversation. But if you want to be one of those brave souls today, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Tonight, October 30th, 2016, is a live program, so I can take your calls, hopefully. Next week, however, and the week following, it is a different story. I'll be traveling extensively, doing some more workshops, and my schedule takes me to more locations, and I'll be tied up more throughout the week than usual, and actually in the midst of air travel during airtime for the program. So both next Sunday and the Sunday after, unfortunately, the program will not be live. You'll be treated to a rebroadcast of an earlier program, and therefore, once again, if you try to call in, you will not be able to get through. But that's just a fact, a necessary fact of having a rebroadcast program. Tonight, however, we are live, and I am sincerely hoping that the difficulties that we've had with our phone operations are solved. I'll tell you a little bit of background about how this worked. We are in our program formatting, in our internet networking. We are a Skype-based entity here at UCY.tv, and every now and then the Skype program decides to update itself and include new features. But one thing that comes along sometimes with updates are changes in the default settings of the program, and unbeknownst to any of us, and even unbeknownst to our engineer and program producer, was a change that may have been responsible for the difficulty folks have had calling into the program. So we think we have fixed that, and I surely hope we have. But we won't know until someone tries to call in. So if you have a mind to and you want to give us a call, you have something you want to talk about, maybe you have a question you want to ask, maybe you're one of the workshop attendees across the country who's got an example to share that might be of interest to the audience, or maybe you have some follow-up questions you want to ask, just general topics of discussion, feel free to join the conversation at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, could you ask for another more interesting week than we've had this past week on our political scene? You know, we're in another small patriotic season coming up here. We have a Veterans Day holiday coming up in just a few weeks, just a couple of weeks actually, and around that time I start getting inquiries from folks who want either to perform the theme song that you hear play at the beginning and end of the program, or they want it featured in some way. Maybe they know somebody, they want to perform it, or they want it featured in some way at a patriotic event that they're going to have. And I'm wanting to give a shout out to those folks who have made that request in the last couple of weeks, and wish you well. Help to carry the song's message about the inextricable relationship between freedom and character. You know, the song doesn't go into a lot of detail, but the operating premise of this program, one of the main operating premises of this program, is that free societies prosper and are entirely dependent upon people of solid moral character. That's what makes a free society possible, and that's what makes a free society prosper. Because only when decent folks with a solid internal moral compass, are left alone, are given the freedom to innovate without unnecessary regulation and government intrusion, when they don't have to have their lives micromanaged, in a sense. Only when decent people are left alone do great things really happen. Unfortunately, really bad things happen when people of unsound character are given license. And there's always the temptation when things go south, because we have too much, as I call it, character disturbance in our midst. There's always the temptation to try and address that problem through more regulation, through more rules, more laws, more restrictions on people's behavior. If you can't trust people to be good, then you got to micromanage their lives. That's what the temptation always is. But only when we have a general prevalence of decency, of character, can those precious freedoms we have, be the very instrument of great prosperity. And we've seen that in times past. We have a remarkable history in that we've had our ups and downs as far as the character issue goes. We haven't always been great. We've always been a land of opportunity, and we've always had a good deal of freedom, and we've always had that independent spirit, an independent spirit that's been dying in recent decades, but that independent spirit where we could pretty much take care of ourselves, and we didn't need anybody else to take care of us. That was the whole reason for our founding, in principle. But there have been times when we have abused that freedom greatly, and there have been times when our own moral character has been desperately lacking, with really devastating results. And we're in one of those times now. We have been for some time. And I look back on this past week on the political scene, and you almost have to laugh because it's so tragic where we are. It is truly tragic. I don't think I've ever faced a decision as heart-wrenching as the decision I face this election cycle. Not in my adult lifetime, anyway. Not that I can remember, anyway. And the events of this past week are a good example of why. You know, one of the things that I wanted to talk about tonight, I have three topics that I want to discuss. Well, one of the topics that I want to talk about is how desensitive we've become to all this spin that we're subjected to, and all this lying in various subtle forms. Lying, deception, manipulation, interpersonal manipulation, which is what I've spent a great deal of my professional career studying, is at epidemic proportions, and it's literally killing us as a great society. It's killing us. At the heart of manipulation, most of the time, is what I call covert aggression. It's somebody fighting in a dirty way. Somebody fighting in a way that is hard to see that they're really just trying to gain advantage, really just trying to have their way with you, really just trying to sway you in a deceptive, calculating way, as opposed to merely making an honest case. And it's disheartening because so many people do it, and they do it in so many ways. And it's classic what we call crazy-making behavior. The person on the receiving end of it feels a little crazy. They also become numb, especially when they have to get used to it. That's one of the reasons why I wrote my book, In Sheep's Clothing. And I think that's one of the reasons why, even after 21 years now, it is still a bestseller and will likely continue to be for years to come. Not sure when I'll update it again. Probably in the next few years it will need to be updated again. It's been updated 3 or 4 times, but it still actually is illuminating for many people, because when they read it for the first time, they feel validated. They suspected that someone in their life was the kind of person that I describe in the book, but because of what we call the gaslighting effect of the tactics that they use, they ended up feeling crazy themselves. And just seeing the light, so to speak, just having the situation laid out to them in a way that helps make sense out of the reality that they've been dealing with, makes them not feel so crazy anymore, makes them understand what they've been going through, brings some relief just in the understanding. And so that's why I wrote the book, and that's why I'm so edified that people by the thousands have for all these years been buying it, and empowering themselves in their relationships and turning their toxic relationships around. And so I wanted to talk just a little bit about my books, which I don't really talk in depth about on the program. I mention them all the time. But I wrote In Sheep's Clothing, my first book, and first started handling it out at workshops that I was doing back in 1995. And then it got picked up by Amazon as a trade paperback in 1996, September 16th, 1996. And so it celebrated last month its 20-year anniversary in its present form. And I had an interesting experience trying to publish it. I was in New York trying to write this, trying to write a deal for what I thought was this substantive book on how to understand and deal with these conniving types that you have in your life, these folks that make you feel crazy, the folks that end up getting the better of you before you know it, and you only realize what's happened after the fact, like getting whiplash, because they're clever with their use of tactics. So I wanted to write this substantive book. And here I am in New York talking with various major publishing houses, having interviews with my agent and book developer pounding the pavement with me, and expecting preemptive offers from several major houses. And in each case, these folks were wanting basically to sensationalize the work and make it not as substantive as I intended it to be. I really wanted it to be a survival guide for people. I wanted it to be an instrument that they could pick up and say, aha, I see it now. It all makes sense. I understand what I've been going through, and now I feel empowered to deal with it. That's what I wanted. But that isn't what the major houses wanted. They thought the market would be too small for that. They thought, sure, there are people out there in relationships and toxic relationships, but there are plenty of books for them anyway, plenty of books to help them, and they're too small a market, so we don't want them. We want a more sensational book. And so in the end, I had to make one of those character-related decisions. Do I sell out, basically? Or do I stick to my guns and insist that the kind of book that I wanted to write is the kind of book that would get published? And in the end, I stuck to my guns and said to myself, if the book barely makes it out there and some people get some benefit from it, I will have served my purpose. And to my great surprise, and also to my very good fortune, through word of mouth, within a relatively short period of time, considering there was no big promotion with this book, it became a bestseller, mostly thanks to the young company, the upstart company Amazon, that was becoming very slowly the literary marketplace and folks could write reviews online instantly after purchase. And they could also get the product very quickly. And they could read other people's reviews. And for that reason, with all the reviews, mostly good, some not so good, and some really kind of phony reviews from competitors seeking to trash the book and promote their own. Amazon's done a lot in the intervening years to change a person's ability to do that. You got to be a bona fide book purchaser in order to post a review. But in any case, over time, through word of mouth, people becoming empowered in their life gave this book a life of its own, and that inspired me to write some more, to publish Character Disturbance, which is a much broader look at not just the manipulators in your life, but all the different and toxic characters you could encounter, the folks that make relationships difficult for one reason or another, the narcissists, the sociopaths, the psychopaths, the individuals who are really difficult to deal with and even more difficult to live with. So I wrote my book, Character Disturbance, not only to explain the vast spectrum of character disturbance, but also to illustrate why traditional methods of intervention, traditional therapy methods, are ineffective, and what a person needs to look for in the way of getting help. I have had more emails from folks than I care to count, individuals who say that they have experienced what I call therapy-induced trauma, and that is they went for help trying to deal with this narcissistic or manipulative or other character-impaired personality in their life, and in fact didn't get any of the help they needed. Many times they felt that the disturbed character in their life was able to even hoodwink or snow the therapist. So I decided to outline just what it is that good intervention looks like when you're talking about folks of disturbed character. And Character Disturbance is the number one best-selling book in my workshops. It is by far the book that outsells all the others. Most people, the vast majority of attendees actually buy all the books that I have out, but more people buy Character Disturbance than any of the other books. It outsells them, I think, because of its depth. And like I said, many of the attendees, the vast majority of attendees, purchase all four of my existing books in print. There's a fifth one on the way, and that includes my book for the Christian faith community, The Judas Syndrome, a book I'm very proud of. Because it's a living testimony of many folks that I've encountered and the power of genuine faith, not faith professed merely on the lips, but faith truly embraced, to change a person's life and to help a person forge the kind of character that will make all the difference in the world in their lives. And then lastly, my book, How Did We End Up Here, that I wrote with my co-author, Dr. Kathy Armistead, who, interestingly enough, just happened to be my editor on the book, The Judas Syndrome, and having perused many of the articles that I had written on relationship-oriented topics, came to realize how badly toxic relationship survivors needed a field manual, basically, a guide to dealing with all the disturbed characters out there, understanding and surviving this character disturbed age that we lived in. And so with her help and input, we fashioned together the book, How Did We End Up Here?, which talks about just exactly how we did end up here, not only as a society, but how many individuals in toxic relationships ended up where they are, how they got hoodwinked in the first place, how they misjudged the efforts of their character-disturbed partner or spouse to change, and how they can more rightly judge those things in the future so they can avoid the kind of victimization they've had in the past. And so all those 4 books, I'm pleased to say, are bestsellers, several of them in many foreign languages now, and only more to come. I'm awaiting the proof for the Chinese edition, which should be in mass production soon, and then also the Brazilian edition, which should be in mass production soon. I'll have more to say on that in perhaps a few weeks. And once again, as I mentioned, unfortunately, the next 2 programs, next Sunday and the Sunday after that, will be pre-recorded programs. It will be a rebroadcast of an earlier program for those 2 weeks, because I will be in the air traveling at the time of the broadcast and will not be able to do it live. So you won't be able to call in then, but you can tonight. If you have a question you want to ask, something you want to share, a story you think the listening audience would be interested in, or maybe just an observation you have about the happenings of our times, give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. And I will be happy to take your call, and I will hope and pray that the fix that we have sought to our past problems patching in callers will have indeed been solved. We worked during this past week, my producer and I worked to resolve the problem, and we think we have it fixed. So we'll only know when someone calls in and we're able to patch through. But once again, the number to call is 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296. Well, let's talk a little bit about the events of the week on the political scene. One of the things that's really distressing to me, perhaps the thing that's most distressing to me, is the prevalence of what we have come to call spin, which is just another term, basically, for lying and manipulation. Lying because with spin, you inevitably don't tell the whole story. You don't tell all sides. You tell only a particular side in order to sway. You put a particular color on something that doesn't say it all, and that is, as I point out in all my books, the tactic of lying by omission, lying by very selective, careful omission. And it's a very effective way to lie, but it's lying nonetheless. And it always has a destructive impact. But we not only have so much of this, but the thing that's distressing to me is how desensitized we've become to it, how much we've come to expect it, and how, in order to get any reasonable sense of balance in our news coverage, you're pretty much forced to go to a wide variety of sources. You can't depend on any kind of objectivity. You can't expect any kind of objectivity from any one source. And it's really, really sad. And I'm going to give you one example of this that is pretty insidious in a way. Because there is one network that is unabashedly and self-admittedly in one camp. They're on one side of the political spectrum, and they make no bones about it. And they just happen to be the network covering a certain political rally that Elizabeth Warren was holding on behalf of Hillary Clinton, or was speaking at on behalf of Hillary Clinton. And she made some comments later. She made some comments that were derogatory toward one of the other candidates. And the terms that she used are tremendously politically incorrect terms these days, and for good reason. You know, it was actually official diagnostic mental health language at one point in time, not that long ago at all. We've had these terms in psychiatry and psychology that have become politically incorrect, but they weren't always. They were used routinely, and they had a certain meaning. But because they were used pejoratively by certain folks in the general public, they took on a very negative quality, and as a result, we have changed those terms. For example, there was one time in our recent past, about 25, 30 years ago, when we used the term for the folks we presently call mentally deficient in some way, lacking in native intelligence or global intelligence compared to the norm. We used to call these folks mentally retarded in their intellectual development. The term retardation literally means a slowing. And so at the time the term was first employed, there was nothing mean or derogatory meant by the term. It was meant to be descriptive, purely. But it became a pejorative term in public discourse, and so we changed it. It'd be hard to imagine somebody running around in a negative, hostile fashion using the term deficient, like they did use the term retarded. But long before then, we had terms that were developed actually by professionals, including terms like imbecile and moron. These were actually technical diagnostic terms at one point in our medical and psychiatric and psychological history. I kid you not, folks. I'm giving you the straight stuff. You know me. I would not do that. But these terms came to be used quite pejoratively and quite commonly so. And so we don't use these terms anymore because of that derogatory nature. You know, folks cannot help how their brains are wired. And there are every one of us that's walking the face of the earth that has moral decency deserves positive regard, whether or not we have the same IQ points as someone else. So we don't use those kinds of terms anymore. But Elizabeth Warren did. As a matter of fact, she was more than just dropping the M word, shall we say, when talking about one of the other candidates. But she spoke in such a pejorative manner that it was uncomfortable. And because it was her, as opposed to someone else who, if they'd said the same thing, they would have been, I think, pretty well crucified for it. Because of that, the network, in featuring a replay of these comments, edited out very adeptly. You know, it takes you have to be really, really sharp with the edits. It's so much easier these days with electronic editing. In the old days, when we had video and audio tape, believe it or not, folks, engineers used to have to take a one-sided razor blade and cut the tape and review the tape in slow motion and cut out the offending portions and then splice the tape back together. And they had to do it so seamlessly that you couldn't see the glitch in the tape, or you couldn't hear the glitch in the tape. This was a real art. Well, it's much easier to do today with the electronic editing that we have. And so this broadcast entity decided that they would edit this because it would really have caused a firestorm. And they did not want to make a person who's in their camp look bad. And this is what's happened to our news. There are folks on all sides of the spectrum. There are camps that have developed. And these camps only further the divide between us, as if the divide was not great enough already. And it's sad. The dishonesty, the trickery, the spin, the lying by omission. It's a disgrace. It's a national disgrace. It is the continuous erosion of our individual character and of our national character that is at the heart, is at the very heart of our ills these days. And it's about time we took a serious look at that. And it's not only about time that we took a serious look at it, it's about time that we did something about it. We have the power, you and I, we all do. We have the power to do two things. We have the power to make this world a better place by dealing with ourselves and stepping up to the plate and improving our own character. all the changes start with us. That's the first thing we have the power to do. And the other thing that we have the power to do is we have the power to make character matter in general. Once we start making it matter again, once we stop throwing money at reprehensible people, once we stop conferring power on reprehensible people, once we demand more, once we expect more, demand more, and refuse to settle for less in those that would lead us, things will change. Things will change. But we have to decide that character matters. I've already decided that, which is why I titled this program that way. Maybe you agree, maybe you don't agree with what I've just said. Maybe you've got some other thoughts on the dilemma of our time. If so, feel free to join the conversation. Give us a call at 718-717-8296. That's 718-717-8296, and I'll be happy to take your call. I'm going to be doing workshops again, as I mentioned, the next couple of weeks. And next week, or should I say this week, this coming week, on Wednesday, I will be in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and then on Thursday in Lansing, Michigan, and then on Friday in Sterling Heights, Michigan. And then the week following, I will be in Silver Spring, Maryland, and then in Richmond, Virginia. And then I'll be flying out to Albuquerque, where I will be attending a conference where I'm looking forward to hearing the very inspirational and really wonderful, spiritually centered Richard Rohr. I don't know if any of you are familiar with his work or his books or his daily meditations. They're well worth it. This guy really has it. He really gets it when it comes to understanding the basic message, the most fundamental message that folks who profess the Christian faith are supposed to embrace, and who so often fail to embrace, even though they profess themselves to be Christian. He gets it. And I have long wanted to hear him speak in person, and I'm going to be able to do that after my workshop in Virginia. I'll be flying directly from there to Albuquerque to listen to him and to be inspired, hopefully, by what he has to say. And I'm hoping to inspire the attendees at my workshops to deal more effectively with the problems of our time. It's really the most edifying thing in the world to go and meet all these other professionals who are dealing with these problems day in and day out, and helping them gain a perspective that will really empower them in their work. These days we confer all kinds of labels on people, and we try all different kinds of ways to help ameliorate the problem, not the least of which is trying to solve all the problems with a pill or two. And it's really become pretty much of a tragedy, because what's been lost in the process is the importance of character and the tools necessary to help people who are struggling with deficiencies in their character to build better, stronger, healthier character so that they don't have so many of the problems that they've been having in their life anymore, and so they don't cause as many problems for others as that they've been causing. For example, there are individuals who, through no fault of their own, suffer from the endogenous kinds of strictly biochemically based and biochemically induced depressions. This is not something that they desired. This is not something they brought on themselves. Sometimes it can happen as a result of a hormonal change. It can happen in response to an extraordinary stressor. The body's biochemistry changes, or perhaps there's an innate predisposition for it not to be right in the first place. And a person becomes depressed and they can no longer think straight, concentrate right. They lose their interest in the things that they've always had. Their sleep is interrupted. Their eating cycle is interrupted. They have thoughts of self-harm, all kinds of things disrupting their life, and it is not in any way a reflection of their character. So it was a necessary thing, and it was a good thing that some folks came along and sounded the alarm on this and said, hey, wait a minute. You know, a lot of things that we have traditionally thought of as weaknesses of character are really biochemically based illnesses that are not at all a reflection of the person's character. And it is demeaning and unnecessarily and improperly judgmental to label a strictly biochemically caused problem a disturbance of character. So that was a rightful change in perspective that we needed some years ago. But in that, the pendulum may have swung too far in the wrong direction, in that now we see so many things as a result strictly of biochemistry, or perhaps upbringing, or perhaps environmental circumstances, and we discount both the importance of and the role of a person's character. And therefore, we've become very inattentive to the role of character. And when I began clinical practice many years ago, it didn't take me long to realize that while I certainly had those cases where I was dealing with something that was strictly along genetic lines, strictly along biochemical lines, that was strictly induced by nature and was no fault of the person. I had many, 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 many more situations to deal with or to help my clients work through that were a direct result that stemmed directly from the way they had always approached dealing with life, the way they saw the world, and the way they preferred to deal with it, the ways they tried to cope. And this defines their personality, and the moral aspects of that define their character. And so I came to the quick realization that many of the problems that we bring into a therapist's office are character related. And that just giving a pill, just improving coping skills, just improving communication skills, just gathering insight is not the fix. Things aren't going to get better until the person truly grows in character, till they come to see things differently, and they come to habitually do things very differently, till they redefine the kind of person they want to be and their very approach to life and living. That's what makes all the difference. And that's what I have spent my lifetime, my professional lifetime, figuring out how to do, how to help people grow in that all-important thing that for centuries we've called character. It really matters. It matters in relationships. It especially matters in marriages and raising children. It matters in the workplace. It matters in the conduct of our business affairs, our community affairs, our politics, all the decisions that we have to make, the big decisions in life that govern our affairs. Folks are incensed that one of our candidates running for the highest office of the land would have made certain comments and behaved in a certain manner that reflects an attitude toward other individuals so disparaging and full of so much haughtiness and disdain that it unnerves them to think of such a person in a position of power. And it should. It's about time that it's really mattering to people. But then on the other hand, you have someone who is a complete stranger to the truth. Wouldn't know it if it banged on her head. Wouldn't tell it even when it would do just fine. One of the things I was going to talk about tonight, but we're kind of running out of time, is what's really behind pathological lying. Folks in abusive relationships know what I'm talking about when I talk about pathological lying. These folks among us who lie so much and so often that they even lie when the truth would suffice, when the truth would do just fine. My grandfather used to say, they will climb a tree to tell a lie, even when it's easier to stand on the ground and tell the truth. And they leave you scratching your head, wondering what's the point? What's the rationality of this? Are they sick? Are they delusional? And without going into too much detail, because we don't have time tonight, I can tell you that many great researchers, many great mental health researchers over time have been perplexed by this problem. But in my work over the years with hundreds, thousands actually, of character-disturbed persons, they taught me that there really is a rationality to pathological lying, lying for the sake of lying, lying even when the truth would do just fine. And that always has to do with maintaining the position of advantage. This is something that I talk about in my workshops when I'm training clinicians. I use the old axiom from real estate that in real estate there are only three things that matter. And the answer, of course, is always location, location, location. And when it comes to the disturbed character, the truly morally impaired character, it's only one thing that really matters to them. There are only three things that really matter to them in any given situation. And those three things are position, position, position. They always want to have the position of advantage. They always want to be in the one-up position, having power over the other person, holding sway over the other person, maintaining a position of favorable image. It's all about maintaining a desirable position and not giving it up for any reason. And this is why the pathological liar lies. They don't want you to have their number. They don't want you to know who they really are or what they're really about. They always want to be one step ahead and one up on you. It's just really that simple. And such people are simply untrustworthy. So here we have it. A truly reprehensible egomaniac, a haughty, disdainful, emotionally shallow person incapable of any depth in a relationship, incapable of really caring, with a pathological size ego, and then a person very, very similar in character, who won't even tell the truth when it would do just fine. Wow, what a choice we face, and what a testament to our character-impaired age. What a testament. If we don't realize the importance of character to the very survival of our free society, then I'm afraid, folks, our free society is done. And so I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to keep writing about it. I'm going to keep preaching about it on this program. I'm going to sound like a broken record, because in order to survive and in order to prosper, we have to make character matter again. We have to hold people to account. We have to demand much more. And we have to think enough of ourselves that we won't settle for less. Only when we do, will we get the kind of governance we need. In the meantime, we will always get the governance we deserve, because we alone decide. We have the power to make a difference. And if we cling to the notion that serving our particular interests is more important than the character of those who would lead us and be entrusted by us with the power that comes along with the elective office, then we will continue to get the kind of untrustworthy and corrupt governance that we've had. So with that, I'm Dr. George Simon, asking you to tune in again next time for another edition of Character Matters. Remember, next week and the week after, the program will not be live, but tune in 3 weeks from tonight for a live broadcast. I'm Dr. George Simon. Thanks for listening. Take care.